Today I only have a quick and dirty announcement. Hopefully it's an exciting one, or maybe it's terrifying. I haven't decided yet. While I was working on the last skill/last animal series and wondering why some people seemed more chameleon-esque than others, I made a little discovery. A couple of months ago, I made a video about this new OPS aspect, which I call tendencies. Tendencies are the combination of skills/animals. We know them kind of from OPS as the first two skills/animals combined, which brought us such great labels as mopes, douchebags, crackheads, and skips. But we also already know them from things like extroversion and introversion, which I renamed to collaborative and selective. I renamed them because these two words have associations that don't match well with what the tendencies actually do. If you've been following me, you might have noticed that I renamed a bunch of other things as well. There are two reasons for that. One, now's the time. We won't be able to rename things from Carl Jung because they've been around forever. But we can clean up the animals, or skills as I now call them, because the system is still young and relatively unknown. Two, I'm looking for the simplest and shortest way to explain something to others that does not have them scratching their heads. And sorry, but what are animals? I think we can all imagine what skills are, though. And should it be called sleep if it's something that takes care of more than sleeping? In fact, is sleeping even a skill if that is what skills are? Now, are my names genuinely better? Maybe not. But again, now's the time to experiment. Back to the tendencies. Because they were missing, I coined two new tendencies, receptive and protective. And these are the four tendencies. Collaborative, formerly known as extroversion, is the combination of respond and guide and doubling up on consensus. Selective, formerly known as introversion, is the combination of hone in and explore and doubling up on discernment. Receptive is respond combined with explore and doubling up on openness. And protective is guide combined with hone in and doubling up on relevance. In my video about the tendencies a few months ago, I made some assumptions that were a little hasty. At the time, I thought that tendencies were nothing but an extension of the skills/animals and therefore only marginally interesting. Turns out, not the case. Tendencies are their own thing and they are actually quite relevant in our lives. They have their own order, and that order does not have to follow the skill/animal order. Why does that sound familiar? Oh yeah, that's right, because that's what we know from the functions, where some skill/animal orders contradict the function orders. And we call these people glass lizards. Well, guess what? There are tendency glass lizards. But that the tendencies don't line up with the skills/animals isn't even the most interesting bit. Tendencies double up on the functions, the layer below the skills/animals. But the tendencies do not have to line up with a person's savior functions. And here you suddenly understand why there are attenders/observers who talk about people all the time, and why there are intenders/deciders who go on and on about paths and info, or why there are IPs talking about others all the time and IJs being chaos monkeys. And if you've ever been confused when typing any of those coins, maybe that's the reason why. You might have been staring at the tendencies, not the functions. But what are tendencies? How are they different from skills/animals? And more importantly, how are they not just the functions? Well, here's our current theory. Cognitive functions seem to be about handling the current moment, navigating the very present and immediate surroundings. That's why functions are more animalistic than higher level aspects. And you get triggers and freakouts. But you get them as a reaction to one-time external stimuli. They do follow a pattern, but there's no deep justification behind them. You'll still come up with all kinds of explanations for your freakout in the moment. But a week later, when the heat has cooled off, you probably won't spout the same attitude in a casual chat about other things. Skills/OPS animals are more like complex skills. Actual physical animals still have them, albeit in a lighter version. And by the way, those sentences should have made it clear why I thought it was absolutely essential to rename animals to skills. Humans have a more advanced version of skills/animals so that they can accomplish tasks that take more time to complete. You don't get big freakouts usually, but you get life piles, voids, and maybe bad habits. Tendencies are an even more high-level, long-term, and especially conscious thing. We currently think of them as core beliefs or attitudes. Both core beliefs and attitudes can be formed when you're very young and as a reaction to trauma, so they still have an in-the-moment component, like social anxiety and OCD and panic attacks. But they are more long-term oriented and seem based on limiting beliefs rather than being just pure reactions. They're talked about in a more high-level abstract fashion, and so they can be picked out by very specific key words. That means that we're less looking for freakouts or strange energy and are more looking at language. Their imbalance still makes people very unhappy, but in a more long-term, life-altering, and again, conscious way. And that's probably the reason why people talk about them quite often, much more actually than about their skills/animals or functions. These two facts, being keyword-based rather than vibe-based and being talked about very often, make tendencies surprisingly easy to type, usually. The tendencies fall into two axes. One I've called judgment, and it's about, well, judgment. Morality, guilt, expectations, perfection, potential, self-worth, vulnerability, and things of that nature. This axis is where collaborative and selective lie, and this is why people that are imbalanced here can sound like intenders/deciders, even when they're not. And then the other we call the choice axis because it seems to be all about long-term choices, paths, regrets, touchstones, beliefs, truth, coincidences, stress, blockages, and death, apparently. This is where receptive and protective lie and why people that are imbalanced on this axis can sound like attenders/observers, even when they're not. Neither axis contains exactly topics that many animals or even early humans grappled with, so we think that the usage of tendencies evolved as humans evolved. As societies grew larger, people needed to figure out morality, and as they became more aware of death, they needed to figure out the meaning of their lives. We speculate that back in the Stone Age, people had maybe one very basic tendency, the combination of their first two skills/animals, but they didn't have access to the others. And it's a sign of our evolution, if you will, that we can now use the other three as well, which may or may not be true. Another interesting thing I've noticed about the tendencies, there's some indication that people discover their third tendency in some grander chain of events in their mid-20s that ends in a revelation that unlocks that tendency for the rest of their life. So younger people can sometimes be harder to type, given that they're in the process of discovering their third tendency and thus talking about it a lot. The difference there is that they're coming to some kind of resolution, so they sound more resolved when they talk about this tendency. Also, curiously enough, it seems easier to see the axis someone is unbalanced on rather than which end of the axis is actually last, especially when someone is older as they then grapple with their last tendency consciously. And that's as much as I'm willing to say for now, given that a lot is still speculation. I will make a more comprehensive video eventually. I still have my last skills/animals video series that I would like to finish first, but I'm also currently working on finding everyone's tendencies. And that's actually important to do in parallel because I need to make sure I don't have too many tendency glass lizards in my skills/animals videos, like Selena Gomez or Christopher Nolan, and probably a bunch of others that slipped in with the impotent rebels. Now, before I go, staring at this Venn diagram, I can't help but notice that the tendencies too overlap. So I guess you could go really crazy and look at tendency combinations. You might, for example, call the combo collaborative and protective serve and the combo collaborative and receptive unite. Maybe you would call selective and receptive disrupt and selective and protective cocoon. Or maybe Jesus. I haven't decided yet. You could label the whole thing missions, and then you could split them into two axes. One called fundamental and the other pragmatic. You could discover that people seem to only have access to one mission, if that, and you could put that one mission after the tendencies with a little @ sign. But of course I would never do that because it would be insane and irresponsible to explore the next level when we haven't even figured out the tendencies yet. In fact, forget I ever said anything. It's probably not actually a super exciting discovery that could signal the next stage of human evolution. And so, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's not important at all. So, thanks for watching. I will be coming out with my last skill chameleon video very soon, so subscribe if you don't want to miss out. See you next time.